Well, we certainly want to welcome Brad White, who's the Chief Operating Officer of VARC Solutions, located here in Pearland and as well as Dallas. That's where Brad hails from. I've known VARC for about, I guess, maybe almost 8 years now. Wonderful group that helps out with QuickBooks installations and add-ons and integrations and all that. And why don't we let Brad introduce himself and VARC before he begins his presentation. Again, welcome everybody. Let's give a warm welcome to Brad White with VARC Solutions.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Really appreciate it. And yeah, so kind of like big picture, I've been in the QuickBooks space for just a long time. Most of my career, shortly after college, I started with a company that taught people how to use QuickBooks. So we were, I was flying around the country teaching end users, what it was, how it works for 2 straight days. So I have no problem talking about QuickBooks. Been doing that for a long time. And really in my professional role career, pretty much just been working and running businesses that happen to use QuickBooks as the main revenue source, whether it's training on QuickBooks or bookkeeping on QuickBooks or consulting on QuickBooks. So that's kind of why I'm here, because I've been using it a long time and know it really well, and I'm hoping to share enough with you so that you can speak intelligently about it if you aren't very familiar with the QuickBooks product line and what it can do. But it's just like when I talk with people in networking, there's very few people who know the product incredibly deeply, so just being able to talk and have a little bit of a sense for what what it is and what it does and what when it is a good fit and when it's not a good fit. Those are really important things, I think, to be able to share, especially if you're taking on a role in a company. Being able to advise the company from a professional accountant's perspective, on what is a good solution, what is not a good solution for any given business, I think is is a valuable thing that you can contribution that you can make to a business as well. So yeah, so that's kind of why I'm here, and I work for VARC Solutions. We do anything and everything to do with QuickBooks. So if you just think of us as the QuickBooks folks, any questions you have now or later, just let me know, and we'll happy to help you with that stuff. So you want me to go ahead and just jump right into it, Mark?
Sure, jump right in. Let's get started.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to pull up my slide. I just shared my contact information via chat too. So, I know like on a lot of these types of calls, people have to drop off early. So I wanted to make sure you had that now. So if you do need to reach out later, you've got the information. You can reach out, email, call, whatever you need. Okay. And I do have a copy of this slide deck too that we'll share with the group, and just in case you want a copy of it. So from a big picture standpoint, we've got a lot of stuff I want to cover today. QuickBooks is more than just a product, and so that was kind of the backdrop, if you will, for this presentation. There's so much to QuickBooks. You have no idea. It's not just this product you install and you do your accounting on. It is an industry. It is an ecosystem that has very, very deep roots, especially in America, but also in other countries too. So what I want to do today is really just kind of give you that 30,000-foot view. What is QuickBooks? What are the options? How does it work? We're not going to get in and look at QuickBooks and do demonstrations, but I think we've talked about possibly doing a couple follow-ups to this if we want to go a little bit deeper in any of these areas. But I want to talk about what are the different versions and why would you choose one versus the other? Because it's actually important. If you go to QuickBooks.com, you're not going to see more than one version. You're going to see one version, and that's the one version that Intuit kind of is promoting right now, QuickBooks Online. But there are other versions out there, and they're oftentimes better than what Intuit might be promoting right now. So it really depends on the client, depends on the company that's using the software. So I'm going to talk about those different options, talk about, what if you're on one platform and needed to migrate to another one? How does that work? And what are some of the challenges that kind of go along with that? And then when we talk about, QuickBooks as an industry and as an ecosystem, there are other parts to it that are important beyond just the fact that you've got this accounting software. and that's the payroll system, the merchant accounts, other things that kind of plug into QuickBooks that make it work for a given business. So we'll talk about some apps, some integrations, and then probably even more important to you guys is, if you're out there looking for a position, being able to tell a potential employer that you are certified in QuickBooks, especially if they use QuickBooks, that is incredibly important, and it will set you apart because, at least from my experience, if you put 100 people in a room, trying to get a QuickBooks a position that has anything to do with QuickBooks, there's maybe 5 or 10 of them that actually have any certification whatsoever. So it really is something that can set you apart. And then also as you get into, either taking on a role within a business, or the other alternative, which I know some of you have probably already been working on, and that's the whole fractional model. So you're doing your professional accounting and financial executive services, if you will, for multiple businesses. There's some revenue opportunities as well that you should be aware of. A couple different ways of doing it, and it's something that that we do as an accounting business too. So it's something that most people don't know about, and we're going to talk about that, so at least you're aware of what it is, how it works, things like that. And then I do tend to talk a whole bunch. I do it every day, all day. So um, if you have a question, raise your hand, send it via chat. Let me know. Let the host know, and we can stop anytime and have a little bit of a dialogue too. So hopefully this won't just be me just going through my slides all day. So feel free if you let me know if you have any questions. And by the way, I'm going to be primarily looking at my screen. So if there is a chat that comes through that you want me to address, please do call that out and let me know. So first thing I want to really focus on is what is QuickBooks, and what is that 30,000 foot view? There are two primary options when it comes to QuickBooks. There's QuickBooks Desktop and there's QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Desktop is the one that's been around for 25 years. It's the one that you buy a disk or download it and install it on your computer. It is the most robust, option when it comes to QuickBooks. It has the most robust feature set and what it can do. It is the one that's been around the longest, so it has the most user base as well. And then there's the QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online is, I want to say it's the newer QuickBooks, but it has also been around for over 15 years. So it's not new. It's been around for a long time. It's been developed for a long time. But relatively speaking, it is the newer of the versions. But also, being a newer version, it actually doesn't have all the features that you might expect or that you might be used to within the QuickBooks Desktop software. So it is not as feature rich. It does have some limitations, and there's pros and cons. Okay, and we're going to talk about some of those. But generally speaking, when you talk about kind of like desktop versus online, it's not just those two options. Within each of those options, there are 3 to 4 levels. So it does get a little confusing. So desktop actually has 3 levels. There's Pro, there's Premier, and there's Enterprise. And generally speaking, if you think of those 3 different options, we're really thinking about, small to slightly larger businesses to slightly larger businesses. So think of it in terms of that. The easiest way to break that down, besides just some of the features that you get when you go up the ladder, is basically the number of users that need to be in the QuickBooks accounting software doing anything. You could have the owner of a business that has access. You could have the person that's doing AR and AP, they're a user. So as soon as you get beyond, for example, 3 users in the software, QuickBooks Pro Desktop is not enough. You have to go to Premier because it allows up to 5 users. And then, when you get into larger scale businesses where you might have, maybe not just the accounting folks in there, but you've got maybe an HR person in there. You've got somebody specifically dedicated to payroll in there. Maybe you've got your sales team in there, because they're doing estimates and invoices and all these other types of things that are not just pure, accounting, general ledger, journal entry, financial, based activities, you need more users. And so if you need more than 5 users, Enterprise Solutions is the best selection, and that actually can go up to 40 users. So it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot you can do it. So beyond the users, there are some, basic concepts in terms of the features that you get. The higher level you get, the more features that are kind of built into it and that are options for you. Okay. QuickBooks Online is broken down similarly in that you've got Simple Start, Essentials, Plus, and Advanced. Simple Start is really that, hey, I'm a sole proprietor. My business is very simple. I just, need to record the occasional sale. I want to be able to manage my business expenses and be able to run a basic P&L. Okay. Pretty basic stuff. Most people, I mean, I don't see very many people using it because it is very limited. It's just one person and very small business. Essentials is kind of the equivalent of Desktop Pro in that it includes 3 users. Again, it starts getting into being able to manage bills and vendors and payments and things like that. So there's features that get added as well. And then Plus is up to 5 users, and then finally Advanced is up to 25 users. So one of the key differences though is with Desktop, you could actually buy, QuickBooks Pro 2 user, and you're only paying for 2 users. Whereas with the online software, it includes the 3 users, it includes the 5 users, it includes the 25 users. So you're paying for all the users, and you can use as many of those as you want within that license. So, so if you've got, to kind of clarify what I mean by that, like on Enterprise Solutions, you could actually have Enterprise Solutions with 2 users. You're not paying for 40 just because you can have 40. You're paying for how many you buy. Whereas with QuickBooks Online Advanced, you're paying for QuickBooks Online Advanced, and you can have 1, 2, 5, 10, 25, and it's all the same price. Okay. So that's just a different pricing model that Intuit has. And again, roughly broken down by the number of users is how that typically works. So something also that's interesting about Intuit and the QuickBooks market is prior to December of 2021, so just about 4 months ago, you could actually still buy QuickBooks Desktop once, install it on your computer once, and then use that for any number of years without having to continue pay anything to Intuit. Whereas the online products were all subscription based. So after December of 2021, that model changed, and now if you want to buy QuickBooks Desktop, it is now on the subscription model. That's the way all the software in the country is going. So some people don't like it, but that it is just what it is. If you want desktop QuickBooks, now you can get Pro Plus is what it's called, or Enterprise or Premier Plus, and that is a subscription model. So both with desktop and online, they've got monthly options or annual payment options, but you are paying either every month or every year, and it's a recurring subscription. Okay, so no longer can we buy the software, install it, and then just use it for 10 years. So
Brad, question. So on the online deal where you see like Essentials, it says $25 a month. Is that per user per month, or
no,
or just for the up to 3 users, it's $25 per month?
Yeah, see, yeah, exactly, and that's why I wanted to clarify that. So if you buy Essentials, the retail price is $50. We're a reseller, so we could actually get a discount for the first year. And it, that 50% off is what it is right now. And yeah, so if you buy Essentials, you can have 3 users, and it's the same price as if you had 2.
It's that 25 or 50.
Yes, exactly.
And then obviously for the advanced, then it's 90 for all of them. So you're basically paying like, what's it, 180? So whatever that comes to, dollars per month per user type thing. I get you.
Exactly. Cool. All right. So let's see. Any questions? Any other questions coming through the chat? I haven't seen or haven't been looking at those.
What's the general price of the enterprise version of the desktop now, and from an annual subscription basis?
Yeah, so it does vary by number of users, and it also varies by the bundles that are included with it. But I would generally say that enterprise solutions, think of that as probably in the range of at least $1,000 a year and up. Um, I would say most of the people that we see buying enterprise solutions, that they have at least 5 users. Sometimes it's 5 to 10 users. Um, and it's usually in, I would say, probably more close to the 4 to 5 to 6 thousand a year range, because it's, you're bundling in payroll, you're bundling in time tracking, um, a number of other features that you can add.
Inventory, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Advanced inventory. Yep. Yep. So, ballparking in that 3 to 5 thousand range is probably in the right range. But yeah, and if anybody wants a specific price for a certain scenario, let me know. We can tell you what it would be.
Yeah. So it's add on what you want or what your needs are, right? So if business doesn't use inventory, you don't have to put the inventory package in there. You get the enterprise basic, and then you add on payroll, whatever it might be.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And so what's interesting about, to talk about desktop and inventory. So QuickBooks Desktop Pro, Premier, Enterprise, they all have the, what I would call basic inventory capabilities. I mean, you can create an inventory item, you can track quantity on hand, you can do that with any of those versions. QuickBooks Online has, you can track inventory in QuickBooks Online, but it's a little bit more limited in terms of the capabilities and the reporting and things like that. Um, Enterprise Solutions has what is called advanced inventory as an option, and that's kind of one of those add-ons that does cost money. But with advanced inventory, you get things like serial or lot number tracking, multiple sites that if you've got inventory in multiple locations, you can actually track that with advanced inventory. So track lots, serial numbers, bins. It also does, assemblies and sub-assemblies and build of materials, and it is
Manufacturing and stuff like that.
yeah, it's a little bit more manufacturing capable for sure. Yep. Yep. Good question. All right, cool. Well, let's go on to the next slide. So
Hey,
let's
Brad.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, just two fast questions. I'm curious. You said before that desktop has more features and is more robust than installed. Why is that? Do you have any idea? I mean, it would seem like it makes sense to have them, be the same, I would think.
It would make sense, wouldn't it?
You might think so, yeah. I mean, was there some reason for that?
Generally speaking, I mean, I can't speak completely for Intuit on this one, but
Sure.
what I will say is, just like with anything, the desktop software has been around for a long time, and it's gotten built and refined and tweaked and changed, and as a software development company, think of Intuit as not just a marketing company, but also a software
Sure.
development company. Um, what are they going to do next year to get people to buy the software? Well, they're going to add something to it. So they've always added things, changed
Sure.
things, enhanced things. And so you've got a software that's just been around longer. So
Yeah.
trying to keep up with, hey, why should somebody buy this new version? They've continued to add stuff and add stuff and add stuff. Okay.
Sure.
So I think that's part of the underlying, reason for it. The other thing though, and this is kind of like interesting about the history of it, is what Intuit found is after a number of years of doing that, where they were adding and adding and adding, the software itself actually got more and more complex,
Sure.
got harder and harder to use. And that kind of started getting away from what Intuit's vision for the software was in the first place. Intuit from day one said, hey, you don't have to be an accountant to use
Yeah.
our software.
Yeah.
If you can write a check, you can use QuickBooks. I mean, literally that was their marketing slogan.
Yeah.
But that also became not the case, after 10 years of developing it, because it could do so much that now it was harder to know. I mean, you looked at your home screen on QuickBooks and there's 30 icons on there, and
Yeah.
people just kind of, started glossing over. So that's one reason. I think the second reason is, honestly, it's a different technology. You have, with desktop software, you have so much more control over over the user experience and what people can and can't do, and you can actually create workflows because you're in a dedicated application that can monitor and control what people are doing or not doing. When you get into an online software, it's browser based, and so you're at the mercy of what the browser allows you to do too. So it's a different technology. It has different capabilities in terms of what it can and can't do. Some good, some not good. But the browser, just the fact that it's a browser-based application creates limitations on what you can do. And when Intuit made a decision pretty early into that process, and they're like, hey, we don't want QuickBooks Desktop, or we don't want QuickBooks Online to just be a cookie cutter of desktop, because the cloud does have, some limitations, but it also has a lot more opportunities. There's different ways that we can do it in a cloud-based application than it would be in a desktop application. So, from an ease of use, it would be fantastic if Intuit had said, no, let's just, as closely as possible, mimic what we're doing on the desktop, but then they wouldn't be taking advantage of some of the benefits of actually having a cloud-based application. So it's just part of the reality.
Sure. And also, sorry to, take up time, but like you said before, like, can you just maybe high level, like what industries or businesses, are sort of ideal for desktop versus online and vice versa?
Good question. Good question. So I'm going to break this down generally speaking by saying, you could, if you just started a business, you could use QuickBooks Desktop or you could use QuickBooks Online. Either one of them is going to be fine for the most part. Okay. So either one truly is fine. When you get into more inventory intensive businesses, and I'm not just talking about companies that have massive warehouses with thousands and thousands of parts, that definitely would be better for desktop. But if you've got a business and you have a handful of things that you're selling, okay, you're not talking about thousands and thousands of parts.
Sure.
Desktop is fine. Online's fine. So, but what I do find is that if you're in construction, for example, desktop is almost always better.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Any type of inventory manufacturing, desktop is absolutely better. Just because they have a lot more control over the process and workflows that kind of go along with what I would be doing in that business. So being able to go from estimate to sales order to purchase order to buy materials that you might need for a job, or quote, invoice, getting paid, making deposits. That workflow, I think it's just honestly just works better in the desktop product.
In desktop. Okay.
Are you saying that the desktop has job cost in it now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. QuickBooks Desktop, I mean, has had job costs forever. And it's just a matter of, what are you putting into the accounting system that is related to a specific customer job. QuickBooks Desktop has been able to do that for forever. I would say also from a reporting capability, QuickBooks Desktop is better. It has more robust reports, more customizable reports, the being able to sort and filter and do other things like that. QuickBooks Desktop reporting is just better. QuickBooks Online is getting there, and they've added some advanced reporting capabilities to it. But it is still, it's just not as good. Yes, question.
Right. Is it safe to assume that you can go between these products as your business, like the online, as you said, is good for new companies. Obviously that cost is going to be, probably more manageable. And then as you grow or as you recognize that you need these other features, you can go between them, or vice versa, I guess. If you bought too much and you realize this is more than I need to run my business, can you go both directions with that?
So yeah, and good question. And let me make a distinction. Okay. So if we're talking about, like, maybe we started on desktop and now maybe now we're thinking about QuickBooks Online, that is something you can do. You can migrate. And I've got a slide where I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. but that's more of a one-time thing. You're going from desktop to online, or you're going from online to desktop. Think of that as kind of a one-time switch for the most part. Within the platform though, so if you're on online and you started out at Simple Start, going up to Essentials, you can really do that anytime you want. You could upgrade to Plus, you could upgrade to if you at some point you're like, no, we don't need that anymore, you could downgrade. That's all one of the benefits, if you will, of the cloud software. You can scale up or scale down as needed. With the desktop software, it's a little bit different because you're literally buying a license to a software program, and so you've got that. But if people do need to upgrade or downgrade, those are absolutely possible things. Yep. So let me go back one, or go forward one slide again. So this slide really does talk about some of the criteria that you would use, to evaluate. Should I be on desktop? Should I be online? And so I think this will also further answer your question. So QuickBooks Desktop does have better reporting. It does have what I would call more fit and finish. It's been hit and hit and hit, for 25 years to make it better and better and better. So it is pretty good. The other key criteria is it supports multiple companies on one license. So if I was, and trust me, we've seen so many different businesses out there and different owners they've got their hands in 20 different things. I'm sure you guys have seen that too as well. But if I'm a company and I've really got like 3 or 4 different businesses, with desktop, I can actually buy one QuickBooks, Pro, Premier, or Enterprise license, use that. But I can use that for all those different companies, and it's the same cost. I'm not paying for each company. I'm paying for the QuickBooks license. Whereas with QuickBooks Online, it's one company per account. So if I've got 3 businesses, I'm going to have 3 separate accounts with Intuit, paying 3 different fees for that QuickBooks Online software. So I think that is one of the key criterias. One business, not a problem, but if you've got multiple businesses, that the desktop software can actually be less expensive because you're not having to pay for multiple licenses for those different companies. I'd say the other, and this is not to be discounted at all, the other key criteria is the roles and permissions. So, and I'm going to make a distinction here. So if I was looking at QuickBooks Desktop Pro and Premier, and I was comparing that to the roles and capabilities in QuickBooks Online, I would say those are pretty similar. But QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise is vastly superior when it comes to the roles and permissions. And I'm just going to kind of give you an example of what I mean by that, because I'm sure that's not exactly clear. Think of it like this. In Pro or Premier or QuickBooks Online, I might have different people in the accounting software that I want them to be able to get in and do stuff. Generally speaking, I could say, hey, I want somebody that's in sales to be able to come into my accounting and be able to create an estimate. But if I give them the ability to do anything related to accounts receivable, sales, and AR, they can do anything related to sales and AR. They can enter estimates, they could enter invoices, they could receive payments. They can do all of those AR kind of related functions. Whereas, but what I couldn't do is say, I just want you to be able to do estimates, but not invoices, not receive payments. Or I want you to just receive payments, but I don't want you to be able to do, estimates and invoices. Okay. With Pro and Premier and generally speaking online, you really can't get that granular with who can do what. Whereas with enterprise solutions, you can actually get down to the transaction level and say what people can or can't do. View, edit, create, print. With enterprise solutions, you could say somebody can do estimates, but not invoices and not receive payments. But I do want them to be able to run this report and not this report. So you can get very, very specific and have, you can create pre-established roles, assign those roles to individuals, and then at the role level, decide who can do exactly what at the transaction and the report level. So, when we get an owner on the phone and they're like, hey, I've got, 5 people on my team, I only want this one person to be able to see this one thing, not all these other things. It really takes a lot of the other options off the table, and we almost always have to go to enterprise because that's really the only one that's going to be able to do that robustness when it comes to roles and permissions. So that is one of the key criteria as well. But let's talk about online for a second. So online is better in a lot of different ways, depending on the needs. So if I want access to my QuickBooks in the cloud, I want access to it 24/7. I don't want to have to worry about servers, computers, networks, none of that stuff. QuickBooks Online is fantastic because it is a cloud-based program. It's always getting backed up. It's always backed up. I don't have to have a backup service necessarily, making sure that my files are backed up and secure. The other benefit to QuickBooks Online, given it is a cloud, web-based application, it is also more integratable with other cloud-based solutions. Today, everybody everybody's out there using Outlook, they're using Gmail, they're using Slack, they're using, Twitter and all these other, different types of, social apps and everything else, e-commerce, shopping stores, things like that. The integratability into QuickBooks Online is easier. There's more applications that are plugging into QuickBooks Online because it is cloud-based, and that's kind of the way things have been going. So that is the future, if you will. And then kind of like my two last points that I want to talk about on QuickBooks Online is it is truly better for new companies. If I was a brand new company starting out today, I really probably wouldn't be thinking about desktop at all. I would use QuickBooks Online. I would give it a try, and I would only switch from online back to desktop if it just didn't work. If I tried it and for whatever reason I wasn't getting out of it what I needed, then I might consider desktop. But I'd say generally speaking, for most new companies, probably starting with online is definitely the way to go. It is the future, quote unquote. Even though it's here today, it is the future. I mean, that's where everything's going, cloud-based. So I would start there, but then if it didn't meet the needs, then I would probably look at desktop as an alternative. And when I was talking about how if you go to QuickBooks.com and you were looking at looking at buying QuickBooks, they don't even talk about desktop. I mean, literally, you have to go out of your way to find QuickBooks Desktop. You might even have to call Intuit support and say, "Hey, how do I buy QuickBooks Desktop?" Because they really Intuit is 100% focused on QuickBooks Online as not only their platform, their go-to platform, but also what they expect the world to be like over the coming year, 10 years, 20 years. It all is going to online. We don't think QuickBooks Desktop is going away anytime soon, but it's hard to find online if you don't know it exists and you're not looking for it. Okay.
Is that to say, Brad, that so if it's the future, right now it's not for inventory manufacturing? Does that mean that there's hope that capability will come to the online version?
Yeah, there is. And in fact, I would think the short answer to your question is absolutely yes. I think the long-term vision of this is they're going to keep building it out just like they did with QuickBooks Desktop. And I would say eventually, the inventory capabilities are going to be there. Now, I will say with one caveat that I think part of Intuit's strategy when it comes to QuickBooks Online is taking advantage of the fact that you do have this ecosystem out there that is more and more cloud-based. They don't necessarily have to solve every problem that a small business might have. And so when we talk about integrations and things that kind of plug into QuickBooks, I think this is where the key is. And so let me take a sidestep real quick and give you something that I know you're going to be able to relate to. So everybody's got an iPhone, Android phone, whatever, right? Well, you might have noticed that Apple with the iPhone, they haven't tried to solve every single application need that a phone user might have. They've created an ecosystem that people can build on and create solutions for. So that's why you can go to the App Store and you can get any app to do anything on your phone. They don't have to build it all. And so take that analogy and apply that to QuickBooks. QuickBooks is a great core accounting program. It does basic accounting needs incredibly well, but they don't have to solve every problem. They don't have to solve every inventory challenge, because there are companies out there that are doing that you can integrate with it. So when we talk about integrations later on in this presentation, one of the ones that I'm going to use as an example is a company called Fishbowl. They make an inventory warehouse management solution that integrates with QuickBooks. So for example, you don't have to buy QuickBooks with all the inventory capabilities in it if you can simply buy QuickBooks and integrate it with a solution like Fishbowl that has already solved the inventory problem. Okay, so that's, I think, probably how Intuit's going to keep moving forward with that ecosystem model. But again, over time, they're going to continue to add features, and they're going to add more and more capabilities to it.
Hey, Brad, there was a question that popped in from Steve Adelman. If you start with QB Online, are there things you can do in anticipation of eventually switching to a more robust accounting system?
Good question. Honestly, I think the answer is no, not really. In other words, whether you set it up now and switch a year from now, or 5 years, or 10 years from now, there are other accounting systems out there for sure, right? Especially as you grow. There's probably the only one that we see consistently from a competition basis is probably NetSuite, and that is for companies that are scaling incredibly quickly. So it's not, now we're almost not talking about small businesses anymore at all. Now we're talking a little bit more about that mid-market to even higher. NetSuite is probably the next step up when it comes to that. It's a whole lot more expensive, and they're just different products. And so when you look at just a pure accounting function, what is it, right? It's a customer list, it's a item or product list, and it's a chart of accounts list. And then of course you've got all the reports that you might want to be running based on your customers and your products and your chart of accounts. Those things are pretty seamless, right? I mean, those are basic with any accounting program you use. So as long as you're structuring your chart of accounts well, you're going to be fine. That doesn't mean the migration is easy. It doesn't mean it happens without hiccups. But if you're trying to simply structure your accounting system so that you could eventually scale out of it to another system, there's really nothing you can do, good or bad, as long as you're being well organized, if you will, with how you're tracking your customers and jobs, your chart of accounts, and your items. Okay.
Brad, quick question. In terms of internal controls, separation of duties, it doesn't seem that the online provides much of that. Is it coming? Is it in the process of getting more robust in terms of internal controls?
Yeah, it is. And by the way, I don't want to understate it. QuickBooks Online does have similar capabilities that you have in Pro and Premier, where you can actually say, hey, I want to give somebody access to sales and AR. I want to give a different person access to vendors and AP. I want to give somebody else access to financial statements and journal entries and some of the other types of more accountant focused types of roles. You can absolutely do that in QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online Advanced is making great progress towards getting more granular in terms of what people can and can't do. It's just not at that transaction level yet. So I can't pick and choose on the transaction level what people can or can't do. I can still give them category access. I can give them access to sales and AR. I can give them access to vendors and AP. So you can do that in online. So I think it is probably good enough for a lot of companies. It's just when people ask us, hey, I want them to be able to do this, but not this, this, and this, that's when it usually falls into well, you can't do that. You can give them access to that and all these other things, but not pick and choose. Good question. Let's go on to the next slide, and let's talk about what I like to call the hybrid solution. Okay, so I think I've talked maybe a little bit more about QuickBooks Desktop up to this point, and there's a reason. There are a lot of accountants out there that are QuickBooks Desktop only. There are a lot of accountants out there that are QuickBooks Online only. Literally, I won't work with anybody unless they have QuickBooks Online. From our perspective, we want to make sure the client gets what they need. So we don't really care. You could use QuickBooks Desktop, you could use QuickBooks Online. It's all the same to us. We just want you to get the right product for the right business. But here's the thing. Why do I have to sacrifice? I don't want to sacrifice. I'm a business. I don't want to sacrifice anything. I want to have everything, and I want it all to be perfect. So I want the desktop software maybe because it's the more robust version. It's got all the reports. It's got the inventory capabilities. But gosh darn it, I also want it to be in the cloud, 24/7 access with backups, and I don't want to have to mess with IT and networks and servers. Okay. Well, when you start having those, like, I want it all, the hybrid solution is generally what I would say is something to seriously take a look at. Because with a hybrid solution, you can still have the desktop software, but you can have it hosted in the cloud. So instead of accessing QuickBooks Online via web browser, you're accessing QuickBooks via a virtual server that happens to be in the sky that is hosting that QuickBooks desktop software. So you've got the cloud access. I don't have to worry about servers. I don't have to worry about backups because it's all being done for me in the cloud. And I don't have to give up any of that inventory capability. And so it is an incredibly good solution. It's an additional cost though, for sure. So for example, if I wanted to do desktop QuickBooks in the cloud hosted model, I'm paying for the QuickBooks software, but I'm also paying for the cloud hosting service. And that's another cost. My opinion, and you guys, especially as financial folks, could probably see this even better than I do, but there's also a cost of maintaining your own networks and servers and software licensing for that and maintenance for that. And that's not cheap stuff. So I think, relatively speaking, hosting in the cloud is probably cheaper than maintaining your own IT infrastructure. So I think that's something to consider. But it's not all one thing. So, and let me clarify what I mean by that. There are a lot of different companies out there that do what I call, quote unquote, QuickBooks hosting. And this goes above and beyond what you've probably have heard about. Like, I think most people at this point have heard of Microsoft Azure. You've probably heard of Amazon AWS. Those are what I would call very, very general cloud platforms for servers, right? They're not QuickBooks specific, right? They're just, hey, I want to have my computer in the cloud. I want to have my server in the cloud. Those Azure and AWS type of solutions are there, but they are, generally speaking, they are for bigger companies that have more robust server needs. It's not just one server. There's like hundreds of servers that they're trying to support. Okay. When we talk about QuickBooks cloud hosting, I'm still talking about a computer, just like we're using, all of us right now, right here are using. I can still do my Word and my Outlook and my, manage my documents and all this other stuff on this quote unquote server in the sky. But there are companies that focus exclusively on QuickBooks as an application that they're supporting. And so there's some really good ones out there, and there's some not so good ones that we've run into. So the key criteria though is, if I was considering doing a QuickBooks cloud hosting, I want to know, is it using a shared server or is it dedicated servers? Like, in other words, as a business, do I have my own, effectively my own server that's managing my own QuickBooks, or am I on a computer that other companies are also using and sharing at the same time? Because that affects performance. It affects security. There's some like HIPAA compliance things. If you're a government contractor, there's some government compliance things where you have to have dedicated servers. So that's a question to ask. Um, Different cloud hosting providers have different levels of support in terms of the applications and customer service. You and I have all had that experience where we've tried to call a company and we just can't get support. We can't get through. They don't give you a phone number. They don't want you to call, all that stuff. So there are companies out there that are not great when it comes to support, and there are companies that have incredibly good support. I think the other criteria is I've loosely labeled this as application support. And what I mean by that is for somebody that's got QuickBooks on a local computer, local server, you have complete control. You can put anything on that server that you want, right? But when you get into cloud environments where now I'm a cloud hosting company and I'm supporting these people that are using it, I have to make sure that the server never goes down. I have to make sure that somebody doesn't put something on the server which causes a problem that affects thousands and thousands of users. So these hosting companies, they will put limitations on the types of things that you can put on that cloud server. Some have more limitations, some have less limitations. And then finally, the pricing model is different. Some cloud hosting providers, they charge based on how much storage space you're using. Others, it's how many users have access to it. Some charge based on how many QuickBooks company files you're putting on there. So if you've got one company, that's different than if you have 10. And then an additional charge that we typically see is like, what kind of apps do you need access to? Do you need access to Microsoft Office? Do you need access to some special app that you have in your business that you've been using for the last 25 years that you can't get rid of? You have to keep using it. Some hosting providers might support it, some might not. So we work with, we work with a number of different hosting providers. If you've got questions about that, let me know. We can kind of, point you in the right direction based on our experience, which ones are good, which ones are not so good. And happy to help with that stuff.
Hey, Brad, as a real quick example to everybody. So I've got a client that I do controller and CFO services for, and we have like 9 entities and stuff. And so we went to the GoMyERP hosted solution with the desktop and that, and we have access to our Microsoft Office in there, although it's really just Excel. Is really all. We just want to be able to download reports and stuff into Excel, and then move them from the right network to our own cloud-based where we have our files and all that. So you end up with them kind of in 2 places and everything, but it is really simple to use in that. And then, like you said, if you had some other add-ons, like we were looking at an expense reporting system, the hosting service does have a charge to host that on their site, that you could integrate it within QuickBooks and that. But I found the GoMyERP to be, excellent. I mean, they're really responsive. They help you through the whole process. Anytime there's issues, they respond right away to you and help anybody out. But again, we don't have a lot of users on ours. We just have like 2 to 3 in ours. But we've got all those entities that we have out there on that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and we love GoMyERP. They're one of our favorite hosting providers. They're kind of our go-to when it comes to, if somebody has to have incredible support and dedicated servers and great performance, GoMyERP is our one of choice. But it also can be a little bit more expensive too. So if somebody's very, very price sensitive, we have other options that are okay, that are good. But that's the kind of thing that we kind of consult with folks to help them figure out the right version. So thank you for that. It's good. I know I'm probably talking more than I need to, so I'm not going to speed it up, but I'm going to talk a little bit less. So migration challenges. Just to kind of say this, generally speaking, there are challenges. If you are on desktop and you're trying to go to online, that can be a challenge. If you're on QuickBooks Online and you decide, no, you want to move back to QuickBooks Desktop, that can be a challenge. We do those types of migrations. Some are simple, some are easy. But generally speaking, there's usually some sort of challenge that we run into with that. When it comes to desktop going to online, file size matters. If you've got a large company you've been using for 10, 15 years, it might not convert to online very well because there are some file size limitations. Intuit's pushing that, right? They're trying to get people to move to online as much as possible. It is where they're heading. Since there isn't 100% feature parity between desktop and online, that can also be a challenge. So if you've got inventory in QuickBooks Desktop and in a long history of payroll in QuickBooks Desktop, converting that to online, usually there's some problems. Just because online doesn't have all the same inventory capabilities. And so you might be losing some stuff if you switch to online. Not from an overall accounting standpoint, you're still going to be able to run your P&L and balance sheet. But some of the behind the scenes details of all the things that history is attached to doesn't always come across. And we do run into some problems with that stuff. The other big challenge, just to say it simply, is the user experience for online is different than desktop. Not necessarily better or worse. It just kind of depends on what you're used to. But if you're very familiar with QuickBooks Desktop and you migrate to QuickBooks Online, there is a pretty good learning curve because they are different. They look different. They feel different. How you get to different things is very, very different. So it does require some relearning, and that can be a challenge. Converting from QuickBooks Online to QuickBooks Desktop can also be a challenge. And I would say probably the biggest challenge is it's just getting harder to do. Intuit is slowly taking away the capability to go from online back to desktop without having to call and engage with Intuit support, quite honestly, because they don't want you to. They want to get you in online and they want to keep you in online because they really do see that as kind of the future of the, where they're going. Okay. Look at the little blue box on the slide just for a second, because I think this is also worth calling attention to. Remember how earlier I said if you're starting a brand new company, go ahead and start with QuickBooks Online. If you do that, you're probably going to be just fine. You're going to be happy, right? You're going to use QuickBooks Online. You're going to be very happy. It's going to be great. The challenge is when you're migrating from somebody that you already love and you like and you know how to use, and now you're switching to something that's different. Nobody likes switching to something that's different. Nobody likes switching to something that they have to relearn. So what we have experienced more often than not is if somebody is converting from desktop to online, they're less happy because they do have to relearn. They do have to figure out, okay, how am I doing this and why aren't they the same? Because they see that there is a difference. Whereas if you just start with QuickBooks Online and you're not even aware that there's this other thing out there called QuickBooks Desktop, you don't even know that you should be disappointed, right? So QuickBooks Online is, generally speaking, pretty good for most new companies. But just, anyways, I'll just stop right there. All right. So let's talk about some of the other things that kind of are wrapped up into this world that I like to call the QuickBooks ecosystem. What else can it do besides just the accounting? So there are payroll options. So QuickBooks Desktop, there's two payroll options. There's something called Enhanced, and there's another one called Assisted. With QuickBooks Online, there's Core, Premium, and Elite Payroll. And generally speaking, we're really talking about what is Intuit doing for you that you don't have to do yourself anymore. And that's generally kind of the breakdown between the enhanced versus assisted, or the core versus the elite. The higher up that ladder you go, the more Intuit is doing for you, the more services, the more support, things like that. So just as an example, desktop enhanced payroll, it's pretty much do it yourself. I'm setting up payroll, I'm recording my paychecks, I'm submitting the tax forms, I'm paying my liabilities. Whereas with enhanced, you submit that to Intuit Online and they're paying the taxes, they're filing the reports. So it's just a level of service, and the same thing is true on the online, core versus premium versus elite. And with those premium and elites, they're adding more HR services, they're adding 401k, they're adding insurance, they're adding a number of other things that kind of go with it. But I'll say this about payroll in general. QuickBooks Payroll works. It works really well. We've not, since we're talking about small businesses, if you've got 5 employees, 10 employees, 15 employees, 50 employees, QuickBooks Payroll handles that just fine. If you've got 300 employees, 500 employees, that's probably where QuickBooks Payroll suddenly becomes maybe not as efficient. Because generally speaking, you're going through and you're creating kind of like one paycheck at a time, reviewing it, making sure it's right. We see, larger companies certainly evolving out of QuickBooks Payroll and using something like an ADP, or Paychex, things like that when you've got a lot more employees, or you have a lot more, HR support requirements, things like that. But one of the benefits of having QuickBooks Payroll is it is all in one place. The job costing, we talked to a lot of people who need integrated job costing related to the payroll costs. And that is really hard to do if you're not using payroll within QuickBooks. If you're using any kind of outsourced payroll, very rarely, if ever, does that payroll get integrated back into QuickBooks with job cost detail. So you end up having to do adjusting entries in QuickBooks to account for the cost related to specific customers and jobs. Whereas if it was all in QuickBooks, it's kind of built into it automatically. Let's talk about merchant services. Similar concept. QuickBooks has their own merchant account service. So QuickBooks Payments is what it's called. So if I want to be able to accept credit cards from customers, you know as well as I do, there's 20 different options for that. I could be using Stripe, I could be using Square, I could be using Clover, I could be using PayPal, Amazon payments. I mean, all these different types of things, but all of those other payment services don't integrate into QuickBooks as well as QuickBooks Payments that's built into the software. So when it comes to visibility of fees, when it comes to ease of integrating those payments and attaching those payments to invoices, okay, being able to reconcile those payments within QuickBooks. QuickBooks Payments is absolutely the best solution for that, and they have competitive rates. And by the way, a little hidden secret for you, if most companies haven't shopped their payment rates in a long time, they might not have even looked at it in the last 10 years. So there's an opportunity to save money by looking at QuickBooks Payments if you haven't looked at it before. So you can save your company some money. But the other thing that is also interesting is, as a reseller, we can actually offer clients that take a look at QuickBooks Payments better rates than you would get if you just went to QuickBooks.com and said, hey, what are the published rates? So we actually have discounted rates. And if you've got a company that has a large transaction volume for payments, Intuit will actually negotiate those rates as well, a little bit more on a one-off basis, based on your specific situation. So if you have any buddy that's got a large transaction volume, again, let's chat and we can get you some custom rates for the merchant fees. So those are great things to take a look at. Let's talk about some other, real quickly, just some other Intuit solutions. So QuickBooks, or Intuit, is not just QuickBooks, not just QuickBooks accounting software. QuickBooks also has a point of sale system. They also have a field service management system called Intuit Field Service Management. Both of them, have a very, what I would call a very specific niche that they're serving. QuickBooks Point of Sale is great for boutique stores. It's great for storefronts that have less inventory. Probably not the best solution for restaurants. Okay, probably not the best solution for a big warehouse that's got thousands and thousands of inventory parts. But smaller businesses, your mom and pop store on the corner that has a handful of things that they're selling, and they want to be able to scan it and check somebody out. QuickBooks Point of Sale is great for that. Field Service Management is really great if you've got like what I call break fix dispatch. So your plumbing goes out, your heater goes out. Companies that have to send technicians out to fix something on a dispatch basis, QuickBooks Field Service or Intuit Field Service Management, it's great for that. QuickBooks Time Tracking is another one. Intuit bought T-Sheets about 5 years ago. T-Sheets is one of the industry best-in-class time tracking solutions out there. They've relabeled it this last year to QuickBooks Time. It's web-based, it's browser-based, it's kiosk, mobile app, GPS tracking, all sorts of cool stuff. We use it all day, every day. We love it. It's amazing. And it integrates with QuickBooks so that you can do your invoicing and also do your payroll based on that time. So it is fantastic. MailChimp. So Intuit, you might have seen the Super Bowl commercials this last year. Basically, Intuit bought MailChimp. MailChimp is one of the top, I would call them top 5 email campaign platforms out there, and so Intuit bought that, and I would imagine over the coming years that QuickBooks is going to have a very, very tight integration with MailChimp, so that you've got your customers in QuickBooks, and now you're going to be able to do email marketing campaigns probably eventually within QuickBooks based on that MailChimp connection. So I would imagine that would be coming. And then finally, especially since some of you are not just financial folks, but I imagine some of you probably also dabble in the tax side of things. Intuit does have 3 levels of professional tax product with CERT, Pro Series, and Pro Connect Tax Online. And those are great solutions for professional tax folks as well. So let's talk about some other applications and integrations real quick. To that point that I made earlier, that QuickBooks doesn't have to solve every problem out there, because there are companies that have solved very, very specific problems. Avalara is one of our favorite software vendors because they solve the complexities of sales tax. If I've got multi-state, if I've got even cross-border, Avalara handles the sales tax for that stuff. But probably most importantly, they do GPS level accuracy on the sales tax. In other words, calculating what is the right tax rate for this specific product, for this specific customer in this specific location. They get it right. And they also do the sales tax reporting, filing, notices, everything. Okay, so it's a fantastic service. And by the way, it happens to integrate with QuickBooks. So that's why we love it too. Fishbowl and Activate, perfect solutions for inventory warehouse manufacturing environments. So I don't have to have QuickBooks be the end all be all for the inventory. I can leverage a solution like Fishbowl to do the inventory for me, but integrate the basic, basic numbers and accounting parts back to QuickBooks. Tipalti is another one that we've worked with, and they are an AP automation company, supplier management. And think of it like this: if I've only got 5, 6, 7, 8 bills that I'm processing a month, no big deal. I can enter a bill, I can pay a bill, it's not a problem. But if I'm scaling and I now have hundreds of vendors, and in any given month I've got 30, 40, 50, 60 bills, and I've got I need Sally to be the first approval on those, and then if it's above 20,000, I need that to go to John. Now we're getting beyond what QuickBooks can do, and so Tipalti is a great solution for that, and helps manage that accounts payable stuff. And then Webgility, more and more we're seeing companies start their own e-commerce shopping stores. Not just having a website, but also having a Shopify store, an Amazon storefront, different things like that. And if you have those different cloud-based shopping systems that you need to get the inventory and the sales back into QuickBooks, Webgility is our kind of go-to solution for that, because they basically help integrate and sync the inventory back and forth, as well as the sales order stuff back into QuickBooks, so that you can still run your P&L and know how much money you're making. So good stuff. And really, just because I know we're almost out of time, Points North does certified payroll. Transaction Pro Importer is another one we use all the time if somebody's trying to get data in and out of QuickBooks, maybe into some other system. And then QuickBase is another platform that we build on as a company. QuickBase is kind of like Salesforce, but it's a lot less expensive. And it's also more customizable. So you can literally, when we talk to people that feel like they're outgrowing QuickBooks, it's usually because they're trying to run a business process, not just do the accounting. And so we build solutions on QuickBase to help solve the business problems while still allowing people to use QuickBooks for the accounting, automating workflows and things like that. Yep.
Just two things between these last two slides on that GPS on the Avalar. You can't stress that enough if you do business in California, where you got to do everything down to basically the neighborhood that you're selling. It's crazy, the sales use tax there. And my second thing on these different apps and popular integrations, would these like be the right pickings for Intuit when they decide to make their product more robust, just to buy these things?
Mhm.
And so you wouldn't have to integrate them yourself. That eventually they'll be part of the cloud thing for them because they bought these companies. Because this seems like a lot to have to go out and integrate and pick and choose from all these just to get, a system that works.
No, it's a great point. And just to kind of, I guess, add my 2 cents on that, if you think of QuickBooks as just your core accounting solution, it works great. I mean, out of the box, it works really, really well. But it does, get into the situations where suddenly I'm now in a different place where, I mean, think of it like this. Again, I've got millions of people using QuickBooks, right? Millions of people use QuickBooks. I can't make it perfect for every single one of those millions of companies. I mean, if we talk to 10 different companies, they're doing everything 10 different ways. They've built their business organically, and they're doing it the way they've always done it, and it's not necessarily the way QuickBooks needs it to be done or wants it to be done. So Intuit, I think, has made the decision that they can't be all things to everybody. So they're just going to do what they do well, and then that's why these other solutions are available to solve the different nuances that a company might get into. Okay. Let me wrap up real quickly with the certifications. So there are two different types of certifications out there. There's what is called Pro Advisor certification, and I would call that more, again, your professional accountant, your professional bookkeeper, your QuickBooks consultant, if you will. Pro Advisor certification is the one that you'd probably want to go for if you were trying to consult on QuickBooks, fractional QuickBooks consultant, things like that. Pro Advisors is great, and it does, again, set you apart. They also have kind of an ecosystem related to Pro Advisors where you can get leads, people that are looking for bookkeepers and accounting professionals. They do have a place that somebody can find you if you're a Pro Advisor. And QuickBooks Online Pro Advisor certification there's no cost to that, whereas QuickBooks Pro Advisor for the desktop certification, strangely enough, does have a fee. So if you want more information about that, let me know, and we can get you to the right people that can help with that stuff. The user certification is a little bit more of like, okay, I'm a user of QuickBooks, and I just want to be able to prove to an employer that I know how to use the software. I'm not trying to consult on it. I'm not trying to, maybe do the books for 10 different people, 10 different businesses. I just want to say that I am, certified in the software to use the software well. That's what user certification is. And there's a couple different, training. You can do self-paced, you can do online, there's live classes, and there is a cost for those as well. So real quickly, last thing, and then any questions you have too. The last thing I wanted to stress was that there are also revenue opportunities for this stuff. And there's really two different channels. There's what is called the Intuit reseller or QuickBooks solution provider channel. And then there's the Pro Advisor channel. So Pro Advisors, I'm going to start with that one. Pro Advisors, again, that's typically, hey, I'm a QuickBooks consultant. I'm a bookkeeper that does the accounting for other businesses. So I'm doing accounting services. And a lot of times in that situation, I might be doing services for a business that doesn't have the software. So I might be able to sell them the software and provide my services. And so in that Pro Advisor, it's not uncommon to bundle the software with the services that you're providing. And so there's kind of a wholesale billing type of situation when you get into Pro Advisor. So you're basically buying it from QuickBooks at wholesale and bundling it and selling it to the client or the company with a markup. And so you're making a little bit of money on it that way. The Intuit reseller model, which is really what our company does, is called the QuickBooks Solution Provider. And so that's where you're making money and commissions on the sales of the software and the services, but you're typically not bundling it with it. You know, the client's paying Intuit directly for it, you know, the normal prices, if you will. But you're making some commission on those sales as opposed to making it on some markup. So anyways, a lot of details there. You know, if anybody wants more information about that, happy to talk to you more about that. But that's hopefully that was helpful. It was a fire hose of information, but what questions do y'all have before we wrap up?
Everyone, we have about 6 minutes remaining, so feel free to give Brad a few questions, and he has some time to field those for you if you have some more. I think there were one or two that got added into the group chat. I'll go back and read those real quickly, Brad, while people are gathering their thoughts on that. Kurt Opperman said, Brad, for a small nonprofit with no paid employees, will QBO, Simple Start or Essentials be sufficient to provide the basic financial statements and reports needed to file the annual Form 990 to the IRS?
So for QuickBooks Online, I would say, so we have the Simple Start, Essentials, Plus, and Advanced. I would say, generally speaking, you're going to want probably at least the second one, which is the Essentials. I would say that would be the minimum. I don't believe it has any nonprofit specific reports though. So in that respect, I would maybe be looking more at the QuickBooks Desktop, because with QuickBooks Desktop Premier, there are industry specific versions. And so there is a nonprofit version of QuickBooks Desktop Premier, and it has the 990, it has the some of the more nonprofit specific reports. So that's probably what I would be looking at. Oh, and by the way, one other thing that I think is also important, if you are working with a lot of nonprofits, we are a reseller of QuickBooks, but if somebody specifically is looking for nonprofit, probably one of the best resources out there is called TechSoup, TechSoup.com. TechSoup, they specialize in nonprofit everything. And they also have deep discounts on QuickBooks and other related softwares and services that a nonprofit might need. And that's pretty much where you'd want to go if you were a nonprofit, to take a look at that first.
Thanks, Brad. One other, Betty had typed in here, what are the steps for obtaining QBO free certifications or free certification?
Perfect. Great question, Betty. So basically the short answer is go online and Google QuickBooks Online Advanced. I'm sorry, QuickBooks Online for Accountant. Okay. Google QuickBooks Online for Accountants. And basically you can get a free subscription to QuickBooks Online, the Accountant Edition. And within that Accountant Edition, there's on the home page, there's going to be a button that says get certified, get training, because the whole concept is, if you're an accountant and you get certified and you have this tool, you can set your clients up on QuickBooks using your QuickBooks Online Accountant Edition. Okay, so get the free QuickBooks Online Accountant Edition, and then within that software, they have the links for the certification and the training as well.
Super. Okay, anyone else have further questions for Brad before we wrap things up? Okay.
I actually do have one real quick, Brad. I may actually contact you offline. It's Chris Ruppner here. We are using desktop with Fishbowl as inventory management, but our IT provider has found that the link between those two is very unstable. We have a lot of trouble trying to keep those two systems talking to each other. So they're recommending moving to QuickBooks Online to allow that integration to be more seamless. How do you see that? I mean, we're happy enough with desktop and how it's been operating, but it is frustrating that trying to do exports from Fishbowl, I need support nearly once, twice a week to make that work. So
and where's
that part's pretty frustrating.
And where is it being hosted, did you say?
It's a third party hosted. It's just a contracted IT provider.
Okay.
It's in Oklahoma.
Okay. So the first thing that I would do is I would actually take a look at companies that do specialize in the QuickBooks hosting, which they may or may not be doing for you right now.
Yeah, they're not specialized in that regard.
Because it is kind of its own little animal. But the other thing too is we do actually work with a few companies that are what I would call fishbowl experts. And they do online, I mean, they do integrations, onboarding, setup, and they also have solutions for that stuff. So I'd say, you know, probably email me and let me get you in touch with a few other
Yeah,
people.
I'd like to maybe talk about that a little bit more if we can. So that would be good.
Yeah, because you definitely shouldn't be experiencing that pain, and those integration problems are not.
I just don't want to do it without thinking through all the implications there.
Yeah. Let's talk and we'll help you out with that.
Sounds good. Thanks.